If you think one simple nighttime routine can completely change how a man feels in his body, his confidence, and even his connection with intimacy, you might be surprised at how much power is hidden in something as overlooked as oil, touch, and timing before sleep. Because what most men never realize is that performance is not just about the moment itself. It is built quietly in the hours before it, in the way the body is cared for, relaxed, and prepared when nobody is watching. What we are talking about here is not some magical shortcut or exaggerated promise, but a deeply grounding nighttime oil routine that focuses on circulation, relaxation, hormonal balance support, and nervous system calm. When the body is constantly stressed, tight, and mentally overloaded, it does not perform at its best in any area, especially in intimacy and masculine vitality. But when it is consistently brought into a state of calm, warmth, and recovery, everything begins to function more naturally, more confidently, and with a sense of ease that many men mistake for something they have lost, when in reality, they have simply ignored their recovery patterns. Think about how most nights actually end for many men. Screens until the last minute, mental stress still active, shoulders tight, breathing shallow, and sleep coming in rushed or interrupted. Then they wake up and expect their body to feel energized, responsive, and ready for connection, without ever giving it a chance to reset properly. This is where the nighttime oil routine becomes more than just skincare or massage. It becomes a signal to the body that the day is over, the pressure is gone, and recovery can begin. The foundation of this routine is simple but powerful. Warm oil applied with intentional, slow movement across key areas of the body helps stimulate blood flow, reduce muscle tension, and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of the body responsible for rest, repair, and recovery. When this system is activated consistently before sleep, it does not just improve sleep quality, it also supports natural hormone balance, including those connected to energy, confidence, and intimate performance. One of the most important elements is consistency rather than intensity. This is not about aggressive techniques or rushing through steps. It is about creating a ritual that the body begins to recognize. The moment warm oil touches the skin, the nervous system starts to shift. Stress hormones begin to lower, breathing naturally deepens, and the mind starts to slow down. Over time, this repeated experience trains the body to enter a relaxed, receptive state more easily, which is essential for both mental clarity and physical responsiveness. Another overlooked aspect is the psychological effect of self-care in a masculine context. Many men are never taught that taking care of their body in a gentle, intentional way is actually a strength-building habit, not a weakness. But when a man learns to slow down at night, to use touch as a way of reconnecting with his body rather than ignoring it, something subtle changes in his confidence. He becomes more present, more grounded, and more aware of his own physical signals. This awareness naturally carries into intimacy, where presence matters far more than pressure or performance anxiety. The oils themselves are not magical on their own, but they play an important role in enhancing the experience. Natural oils help reduce friction, improve skin nourishment, and provide a sensory cue that the body begins to associate with relaxation and care. When combined with slow, rhythmic application, they create a therapeutic effect that blends physical relief with mental decompression. This combination is what makes the routine so effective over time, not as an instant fix, but as a gradual recalibration of how the body prepares for rest and recovery. What most people underestimate is how much tension the body stores without obvious awareness. The lower back, thighs, shoulders, and even the chest often hold stress that accumulates over days and weeks. When this tension is not released, it quietly affects energy levels, mood stability, and physical performance. A nighttime oil routine works as a gentle way to release that stored stress, without forcing anything, allowing the body to unwind in a natural rhythm instead of a forced one. There is also a deeper connection between relaxation and performance that is often misunderstood. True performance is not about constant stimulation or pressure, but about the ability of the body to respond naturally when needed. A relaxed nervous system supports better circulation, improved stamina, and a more balanced internal state. This is why men who prioritize recovery, sleep, and relaxation often report feeling more confident and steady in intimate situations, not because they are trying harder, but because their body is not working against them. As this routine becomes part of a nightly pattern, something subtle begins to shift. Sleep becomes deeper, mornings feel lighter, and there is a quiet increase in physical confidence that is not forced or mentally constructed. It simply emerges from a body that is no longer carrying unnecessary tension into every new day. And from that foundation, everything related to intimacy, connection, and masculine presence begins to improve in a more natural and sustainable way, continuing from where we left. Once the body begins to associate nighttime as a signal for recovery rather than stimulation, the real transformation of this routine starts to unfold in a very quiet but powerful way. The next layer is understanding how to actually perform the oil routine in a way that supports both physical relaxation and deeper nervous system regulation. Because the effectiveness is not in the oil itself, but in the intention, rhythm, and consistency behind it. The best time to begin this practice is after the day has fully settled, when external demands are no longer pulling attention outward. The body responds differently when there is no urgency left in the system. In that space, warmth becomes more noticeable, touch becomes more grounding, and even slow movement feels like it carries more meaning. The idea is not to rush into sleep immediately, but to create a transition phase where the body is guided out of stress mode and into restoration mode. Warm oil plays a central role in this transition because temperature is one of the fastest ways to influence the nervous system. Slightly warmed natural oils, when applied to the skin, send immediate sensory feedback to the brain that encourages relaxation. The sensation is subtle but deeply effective when paired with slow, deliberate hand movements. Instead of quick application, the routine becomes a form of guided awareness, where attention is fully placed on how the body feels under touch. The process often begins with the larger muscle groups, particularly areas that carry the most accumulated tension from daily life. The shoulders, neck, and upper back tend to hold mental pressure, especially in men who spend long hours sitting, thinking, or working under stress. When oil is gently worked into these areas, not with force but with steady pressure, the body begins to release tightness that it may have been holding unconsciously for days. This release is not just physical, it also signals emotional unwinding, because tension and emotional load are often stored together in the same regions of the body. As the routine continues, the focus naturally moves toward the core and lower body, where circulation and stability are deeply connected. Slow application of oil in these areas supports improved blood flow and creates a grounding effect that helps the body feel more anchored. Many people underestimate how much stability in the lower body contributes to overall confidence and physical presence. When these areas are regularly cared for, the body begins to feel more balanced, not just in strength but in internal coordination and responsiveness. Breathing is another essential part of this process, even though it is often ignored. When the breath is shallow, the nervous system remains partially alert, even during rest. But when oil application is paired with slow, deep breathing, the entire experience shifts. The body begins to synchronize touch with breath, and this synchronization is what deepens the relaxation response. Over time, this creates a learned association where the body automatically starts to relax the moment this routine begins. What makes this practice especially powerful is that it does not rely on external stimulation or distraction. Instead, it brings awareness back into the body itself. In modern life, many men become disconnected from physical awareness due to constant mental engagement. They think more than they feel, plan more than they experience, and analyze more than they inhabit their own physical presence. This routine gently reverses that pattern by reintroducing mindful touch as a form of reconnection. There is also an important psychological shift that happens when self-care becomes a nightly ritual. It changes how a man relates to his own body. Instead of seeing it only as something to push, perform, or demand results from, it becomes something that can also be supported, maintained, and understood. This shift is subtle, but it has long-term effects on confidence, emotional stability, and even how pressure is handled in intimate situations. A body that feels cared for responds differently than a body that feels ignored or constantly overstressed. Over time, the consistency of this routine begins to influence sleep quality in a noticeable way. Sleep becomes deeper, not because of exhaustion, but because the body is no longer carrying unnecessary tension into rest. This is important because recovery during sleep is when hormonal balance, energy restoration, and physical repair are most active. When the body enters sleep in a relaxed state, it does more efficient work overnight, which indirectly supports overall vitality and performance the next day. Another key aspect is the development of awareness around timing and pacing. In the beginning, many people try to rush the process or treat it as a task to complete before bed. But as the routine matures, it naturally slows down. The hands move more intentionally, attention becomes more focused, and there is less distraction from external thoughts. This slowing down is not a limitation. It is the point where the real benefits begin to deepen, because the nervous system only responds fully when it feels safe enough to relax without pressure. As this practice becomes more familiar, it also begins to influence emotional presence. Men often notice they become less reactive, more centered, and more comfortable in silence or stillness. This is because the routine trains the nervous system to return to baseline more easily, instead of remaining in a heightened or stressed state. Emotional stability and physical recovery are deeply connected, and when one improves, the other tends to follow naturally. And perhaps the most overlooked result of all is how this routine changes internal confidence. Not the loud, forced kind of confidence, but a quieter sense of being in control of one's own state. When a man knows that his body is being regularly reset, relaxed, and supported, he carries himself differently throughout the day. There is less internal friction, less fatigue carried forward, and more natural readiness for both connection and performance in a balanced way. At this point, the routine is no longer just about oil or technique. It becomes a form of communication with the body, a way of saying that recovery is allowed, tension can be released, and rest is not something to earn but something to practice. This mindset is what separates a temporary habit from a long-term transformation in how the body functions and responds. Everything begins to come together, because the real value of this nighttime oil routine is not in any single step, but in how it slowly reshapes the entire internal environment of a man's body and mind over time. When consistency is maintained, what starts as a simple relaxation practice gradually becomes a deeper form of regulation, where stress no longer accumulates in the same way, and recovery becomes a natural rhythm rather than an occasional event. At this stage, the body is no longer treating the end of the day as a collapse into exhaustion, but as an intentional return to balance. This shift is subtle, yet it has profound effects on masculine performance and intimacy. When the nervous system is constantly overloaded, the body operates in survival mode, which limits sensitivity, reduces emotional presence, and creates inconsistency in physical response. But when the nervous system is regularly guided into calm through repeated nightly rituals, the baseline state of the body changes. It becomes easier to stay steady under pressure, easier to remain present in intimate moments, and easier to respond naturally rather than react anxiously. This is where many men begin to notice something unexpected. It is not that they are forcing better performance, but that their body is no longer resisting them. There is less internal tension competing with sensation, less mental noise interrupting physical awareness, and more capacity to stay connected to the moment. This kind of presence is often mistaken as confidence, but it is actually regulation. A regulated body performs more consistently because it is not fighting itself internally. Over time, the routine also influences emotional connection. Intimacy is not only physical. It is deeply tied to how safe and present someone feels within their own body. When a man becomes more comfortable in his own physical experience, he naturally becomes more open, more attentive, and more grounded in shared moments. This improves not just performance, but connection, because presence becomes more stable. Instead of being mentally distracted or physically tense, there is more room for awareness, response, and genuine interaction. Another important transformation happens in how energy is managed throughout the day. Without proper recovery, energy is often spent inefficiently, leading to burnout, irritability, or inconsistent motivation. But when the body is consistently supported at night through relaxation and oil-based recovery, the next day begins with a more stable foundation. This stability reduces fluctuations in energy, which indirectly supports better endurance, focus, and physical readiness in all areas of life, including intimacy. What is often overlooked is how deeply the nervous system shapes physical performance. Many men assume performance is purely physical strength or stamina, but in reality, it is heavily influenced by how calm or activated the nervous system is at any given moment. A system stuck in stress mode cannot fully access relaxed responsiveness, while a system trained to return to calm can shift more smoothly between activation and relaxation when needed. This flexibility is what creates consistency. The nighttime oil routine becomes, in this sense, a form of training. Not training for intensity, but training for recovery. And recovery is what allows performance to remain sustainable. Without recovery, the body gradually becomes less responsive, more fatigued and more reactive under pressure. With recovery, the body maintains its sensitivity, stability, and adaptability over time. There is also a deeper psychological impact that builds slowly. When a man repeatedly engages in a ritual that prioritizes calm, care, and bodily awareness, his relationship with himself begins to change. He stops viewing his body only through the lens of output and starts recognizing it as something that requires maintenance, attention, and respect. This shift reduces internal pressure and performance anxiety because the focus moves away from constant proving and toward steady presence. This is often where emotional maturity and physical awareness begin to overlap. A man who is more in tune with his body tends to be more in tune with his emotional state as well. He recognizes stress earlier, responds to it more effectively, and does not allow it to accumulate unchecked. This emotional regulation directly supports intimacy because it allows for more honest presence, less internal distraction, and a greater ability to remain connected in shared experiences. As this routine becomes fully integrated into lifestyle, rather than treated as an occasional practice, the changes feel less dramatic and more natural. There is no sudden transformation, but rather a steady normalization of balance. Sleep becomes deeper and more restorative. Mornings feel less heavy, and physical presence becomes more stable. In intimate situations, this translates into a calmer, more grounded experience where the body responds with ease rather than resistance. The most important realization at this stage is that performance was never the problem. The problem was the lack of recovery, the lack of nervous system regulation, and the lack of intentional transition from stress to rest. Once those elements are addressed consistently, the body begins to function in a more reliable and natural rhythm. In conclusion, this nighttime oil routine is not about chasing enhancement or quick results. It is about restoring balance to a system that has been overstimulated for too long. It teaches the body how to unwind, how to reset, and how to return to a state where performance is no longer forced but naturally supported. And when that foundation is stable, everything connected to intimacy, confidence, emotional presence, and masculine vitality begins to align in a more effortless and sustainable way.